Hey, it's Jack with Cowbell Farms. Let's go tie up some tomatoes and get this thing going. Hey, good morning guys. We're going to string up these tomatoes on this string trellis. I use these hooks. Let me pull one out. Should have already did this, but it's like this, so it hangs on there. And then I have some staples, landscaping staples that I tie to the bottom that I put on there. And then this strings up and I just hang it. And as it grows, I can twist it. And if it gets too tall, I can actually move them along the path so that they actually will keep growing all year up until it frosts in November. So let's get busy. my gosh, this tripod's going to tip over. So now that we have all of these staked in the ground, I'm gonna have to go back and clean up all of the tomato leaves that are down, and we will wrap them a little bit. It'll take a little bit for them to get some height, and then we will keep wrapping them as we go up the string until it gets to the top. And then once it gets to the top up here, if we run out of space and this gets tall, we actually can move these. We can move these along these and keep moving them and wrap them like vining that they do. And I've done this for a couple of years, and Central Alabama is one of those places where it is very, very humid, and so sometimes tomatoes do well and sometimes they do not. They get disease real easy here because it's so wet and hot. We are going into the 80s today, and it could skyrocket to 90s and stuff, and they're fine until they start putting fruit on. But usually once they start getting fruit, they tend to get a little bit of disease from time to time, and I usually try to pull those plants up as soon as possible so that it doesn't spread to all the other ones. I amend my soil every year so I don't have to worry about crop rotation as much, because when you build a certain thing for a tomato, you don't want to have to come back every year and move it somewhere else. That's a lot of work, and this is a really heavy-duty trellis to be moving. So I just try to amend the soils, and if there's anything that had happened in that year, I usually try to take care of that in the soil, or take that soil out and put new soil in and things like that. But so far, this is what we got. We've got another 22 of these to put up, and then we will go back and clean up the bottoms and be ready to go. Alabama, we have to take all the suckers off of the tomato. So it's going to be one stem, and I keep all of the other vines off because they have to have airflow because of all the humidity. It's nice if you could just leave them bushy, but I've never gotten mine to do well if I just leave them bushy. So I take everything off of them every time, and they're just going to go straight up one stem all the way to the top. And this is just one of my trellises, so that's the way we're doing it on that one. I have also a cattle panel here that runs all the way down 40 feet, and I have tomatoes planted in those beds, and they're going to go up the cattle panel. And I do the same thing. I keep them all trimmed down to one stem, but we just tie them onto there. That is actually, I would say it's easier, but when they get to the top of that, they just start hanging back over. So I have to take them over and then start pinning them along the side as they go over. Just kind of start tying them off onto the sides of that. And then we have other places that we have them tucked in here and there. And then we have all of these that have cherry tomatoes on these two outside ones, and then there's pepper plants on this small one in the middle. And this is another experiment this year, because last year those peppers did not do good there. They did great on the other side of the greenhouse. My hot peppers did wonderful. All my bell peppers were so little that they didn't do very well, but it was extremely, extremely hot last year. So I feel like if I wouldn't have planted 180 tomato plants, then I probably wouldn't have had the harvest that I had, because of it rained all the way up to a certain point and then just went to a straight drought. And that is the things that we deal with here in Central Alabama. Well, probably Alabama altogether, and some of the southern states, is you just never know what you're gonna get. And this year I plan to put up some shade cloth so that I can cover some of this if it gets like into the 100 degrees digits there, triple digits, to try to protect it some from the extreme hot and that time of the day. Because out here, there's sun from 7 to 7 out here. There's no shade in this part of my garden. It's full sun, 12 hours or more. On some long days, it's 13 hours. So it's a lot of sun for them to be in that direct light without a little bit of shade in the afternoons when it's the hottest after 3 o'clock. So we now have all of our strings tied down and staked into the ground beside the plant. It's not tied to the plant. That makes it easier at the end of the season also to just compost everything, when you can just pull that out and unravel the string. If you're wondering about how I label them, I actually bought these little metal signs at the Dollar Tree, I think, last year. And so I just painted my tomatoes and the names on there. And so that's how we have that labeled, because these little ones in the ground will disappear. And some of my strings are not as tight as other ones right now, but once the plant gets a little bigger and I can wrap it, it will tighten these things up. This is how big the tomatoes are getting since we put these trellis strings on. They're actually doing really well. They've grown tremendously, probably quadrupled in size. I've got a weed out here. Got grass growing in my blocks, but once we get into full-on summer and these get tall and have fruit, I will make another video on how they look.